wasn't going to, play the inside game. That's not who I am as a political figure, as a public figure. And so I'd go around saying these things to groups, and I'd hear myself say them, and I was sort of sounding like a politician. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. We're not going to increase taxes. We're going to lower taxes. We're going to get rid of regulations and all that. And as I drive away from the events, I'd say, if this ever happens, I'm going to keep the promises. That was real important to who I was and what I wanted to be as a public official. And so after I became Speaker and in the few years after that, the finest moments of my life are when people come up to me and they say, Bill, you kept your promises. And that was really important to me. So as I was looking at, you did it, Bill. And so, as I was looking over what is a fine group of Republican presidential candidates this cycle, as I said to some folks yesterday, we have an embarrassment of riches. We have great men and women who are being talked about and running for president. But what was most important to me is to find someone who doesn't just talk the talk, but walks the walk. Someone who has made the commitments and followed through on the commitments. Because you and I, as you guys know, as a New Hampshire state rep earning $100 a year, you never really quite become a politician. You're just there for a while, you walk away. And so for you and I, what is real important as we look at these public officials is to be able to trust them, to know that when they say something, it is the truth. It's just not convenient for the moment. It's not convenient for the vote. It reflects who they are because they've done it before. That was important to me. I looked at the group of candidates, and there was one who stood out for keeping his commitments, for taking the brickbats, which I've been experienced with as well, and not deviating. And that one person was Senator Ted Cruz. So just as I'm really thrilled to welcome so many of my friends and people I've met to my home, I am particularly thrilled to welcome Senator Ted Cruz and his wife Heidi to our home. Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you very much, Bill. Thank you, Roxanne, Bill, for opening your magnificent home. And I got to say, as a Texan, in New Hampshire, y'all are spoiled with spectacular views. Indeed, if I were President Obama, I suppose we'd be looking for ways to redistribute these views to the rest of the country. What a magnificent day, and what an honor that you give us coming out and spending some time this afternoon visiting. Thank you for welcoming us here. I'm here with my wife Heidi. She is beautiful and brilliant. She is an amazing businesswoman. She is a phenomenal mom to our two baby girls, Caroline and Catherine. In fact, I think she's perfect in every way, except she has unusually poor eyesight.
Also not true.
But she's my best friend in the entire world.
Aww.
And we're thrilled to be with you. I'm just going to talk for a few minutes, and then we're going to open up to questions and have a conversation. But I do want to say for a minute that I think all of us understand the challenges facing this country right now are not typical. America is at a moment of crisis right now. In 6 years, our national debt's gone from $10 trillion to $18 trillion. In 6 years, we've seen the federal government move from protecting the rights of Americans to assaulting the constitutional rights of law-abiding Americans. And in 6 years, we've seen America recede from the world. We've seen the consequences of the Obama-Clinton foreign policy, leading from behind, and it doesn't work. And I want to come to you with a word of encouragement. As dire as things are, people are waking up. People are waking up across New Hampshire. They're waking up all across the country. We just came from a town hall at Southern New Hampshire University. We had 600 people come out to a town hall. Men and women across this state, across this country that recognize this isn't even a matter of politics anymore. It's not a matter of left or right or Democrat or Republican. It's a matter of common sense. Here's some basic common sense principles we seem to have gotten away from. Live within your means. Don't bankrupt our kids and grandkids. Follow the Constitution. You know, it's only in Washington, D.C. those are considered radical and extreme views. In the rest of the country, that's basic common sense. You can get 100 people in any state in the Union, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Libertarians, and they'll agree with those basic propositions. I think the central issue in this next election is going to be reigniting the promise of America. Getting back to that fundamental commitment that our kids will have a better life than we did, and their kids will have a better life than we did. How do we do it? We do it by getting back to the common sense principles that built America. We do it, number one, by bringing back jobs and growth and opportunity. Men and women here understand cause and effect. You understand that every time we pursue out-of-control spending and taxes and regulation, the result is misery and stagnation and malaise. And likewise, every time we pursue tax reform and regulatory reform, every time we unchain small businesses to create jobs, the result has been incredible economic growth. That was true in the 1920s, it was true in the 1960s, it was true in the 1980s. Tax reform. The burdens from the federal government, every year we spend about $500 billion on tax compliance. That's about the cost of our entire military, all of it dead weight loss. As we say in Texas, that doesn't produce a single truck or tortilla. And the best tax reform, we need to adopt a simple flat tax, where every American can fill out his or her taxes on a postcard. And when we do that, we should abolish the IRS. And then regulatory reform. We've seen regulators descend like locusts. Only difference is you can't use pesticide on the regulator. Although I said that once to a West Texas farmer, he said, "Want to bet?" We've seen them descending and destroying small businesses. And the most important regulatory reform, we need to repeal every word of Obamacare. The second key to reigniting the promise of America, we've got to defend our constitutional rights. All of them. We need to defend the First Amendment, our free speech, and especially our religious liberty. Never before has religious liberty been so under assault from government as it is today. And we need to stand up for the God-given right of every American to seek out and worship God, free of the government getting in the way, to live according to our faith and our beliefs. Amen, brother. We need to defend the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms. You know, in the great state of New Hampshire, I understand that much like Texas, y'all define gun control as hitting what you aim at. And I gotta say, Bill, it's a good thing to do an outdoor event, because I'm always worried in New Hampshire when I say we should defend the Second Amendment that people are going to pull out their guns and start shooting. And if we were in your living room, you'd be in trouble with Roxanne for a long time. So at least outside, you know, feel free to exercise your rights. Very nice.
all reaching.
We need to defend our rights to privacy, and that means keeping the federal government out of our phones and out of our emails. We need to defend the 10th Amendment, or as President Obama calls it, the what? The fundamental protection that says the powers not given to the federal government are reserved to the states and to the people. It means there's core responsibilities the federal government has no business sticking its nose into, and chief among that is education. And we need to repeal every word of Common Core. Education is too important to have it dictated by unelected bureaucrats in Washington. It needs to be at the state level, or even better, at the local level, where parents have direct control over what's being taught to our kids. And we need to restore America's leadership in the world. For 6 years, we've seen what's happened. And right now, our friends and allies, they don't trust us. And our enemies, they don't fear us. Instead of a president who boycotts Prime Minister Netanyahu, imagine America standing unapologetically with the nation of Israel. Imagine a commander-in-chief who stands up and says, "We will defeat radical Islamic terrorism." And we will call it by its name. Imagine a president who says, under no circumstances will we allow Iran, run by theocratic zealots who want to kill us, under no circumstances will we allow them to acquire nuclear weapons. Now, many of y'all may be thinking, all of that makes a lot of sense. Those are basic common sense principles. But can we do it? How does it actually happen? Well, listen, if you look to Washington, it's hopeless. As bad as you think Washington is, I promise you it's worse. I've seen it firsthand. The answer will not come from Washington. But if you remember nothing that I say here today, well, then you may have hit the bar for a little bit too long before we started. But if you remember just one thing, let it be this: that I am profoundly, I am powerfully, I am deeply optimistic. The American people are waking up, and the hope for this country is millions of men and women, just like the men and women right here today, millions of men and women standing up, a grassroots movement that is rising up to pull our country back from the brink and back to the common sense principles that made America great. That's why we're here. Because we love our kids. Because we love our grandkids. And we're not prepared to look them in the eyes and tell them we sat idly by while the greatest nation in the history of the world was taken from us. I'm encouraged because of each and every one of you. If we stand together, real power, real sovereignty in our nation resides in one place and one place only, and that is we the people. And it is the grassroots movement that is rising up that together will pull this nation back from the brink, that together will enable us to restore that shining city on a hill that is the United States of America. Thank you.